Stellantis is moving production from this assembly plant in Brampton, Ontario, across the border to Illinois.
It is yet another blow to Canada's auto sector. Stellantis announced it's moving the production of its Jeep model from Brampton, Ontario to Illinois.
Well, let me be clear on Stellantis. I'm extremely disappointed about this decision, and
something major is unfolding in Ontario, something almost no one saw coming. Behind the polished corporate statements and calm press releases, a quiet betrayal has sent shockwaves through Canada's automotive heartland. Stellantis, one of the world's largest automakers, has decided to move Jeep Compass production from Brampton, Ontario to Belvedere, Illinois. It's another heavy blow to Canada's auto sector. The company's decision means the Jeep model will now be built in Illinois, not Ontario. On paper, it looks like just another strategic adjustment. In reality, over 3,000 Canadian workers lost their jobs overnight, while 5,000 new positions were created in the US. Stellantis described the move as a rebalancing act, blaming former US President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs for forcing their hand. But many are asking, was it really just about tariffs or something deeper? The union representing Brampton's assembly plant workers expressed anger and disbelief. According to Unifor 1285, Stellantis had promised commitment to both the Compass and other models produced in Brampton. But after a period of near silence following February's announcement of a temporary production pause due to US tariffs, workers were blindsided this week by the news that production would be permanently moving south. Here's the part most people aren't talking about. The Brampton plant wasn't struggling. It was being completely retooled and rebuilt, with the help of Canadian taxpayer money, to prepare for the electric vehicle era. So when Stellantis packed up and crossed the border, it didn't just take jobs, it took trust. Ottawa's response was immediate and fierce, unlike anything seen in years. Within hours, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Foreign Minister Melanie Joly delivered a message that cut through the corporate spin. If you break your promises to Canada, there will be consequences. Carney called the decision completely unacceptable, vowing to fight for the Brampton jobs and the broader Canadian auto sector. Joly went further, warning that Stellantis' move could be considered a breach of its investment commitments. She made it clear that Canada would not tolerate corporations taking public funds only to abandon their promises, and that legal action was firmly on the table if accountability wasn't met. Carney echoed her stance, reminding the public that Stellantis had received up to 14.6 billion Canadian dollars in public support for its Windsor battery plant. Accountability must follow the money, he said. This wasn't just political rhetoric. For the first time in decades, Canada signaled that it might take a global corporation to court, not out of revenge, but to defend the principle that taxpayer-funded investments come with obligations. That stance could reshape how nations deal with powerful multinationals in the years to come. Meanwhile, Parliament erupted in debate. Lawmakers demanded answers, and attention quickly turned to a paper trail worth billions. The joint venture Nexstar Energy, a partnership between Stellantis and LG Energy Solution, had secured about 15 billion Canadian dollars in public incentives in 2023, 2/3 from the federal government and 1/3 from Ontario. In return, Stellantis agreed to maintain its full manufacturing footprint in Canada. That clause wasn't symbolic. It was written into the deal to protect Canadian jobs and industrial sovereignty. Now, members of Parliament have voted to launch a full investigation into those agreements, demanding unredacted documents to determine whether Stellantis violated the employment protection terms. For many lawmakers, the issue isn't just about one company. It's about whether Canada's taxpayer-funded industrial policy can truly be trusted to deliver what it promises. Officials also reminded the public that this isn't the first time Canada stepped in to rescue Stellantis, then Chrysler. Back in 2009, when the company faced collapse, Ottawa and Ontario provided nearly $2.9 billion in emergency aid. Canada has repeatedly served as a financial backstop for this industry. Legal experts suggest that if Ottawa pursues and wins this case, it could set a global precedent, one that forces corporations to be as accountable as governments when public money is involved. As the debate deepened, something rare happened: unity. The federal government, Ontario's leadership, and labor unions all closed ranks to defend Brampton. Ontario Premier Doug Ford took a hard stance, announcing that not a single dollar of funding would be released until Stellantis presented a concrete restart plan for Brampton. He blamed Trump's tariffs and urged Ottawa to consider countermeasures if Washington didn't change course. Unifor, which represents over 8,000 Stellantis workers, called the company's move a serious breach of the 2023 collective agreement. Union President Lana Payne warned, "If we don't play hard, we'll always be the side that loses." In response, Ottawa created a special task force uniting federal, provincial, and union leaders to protect jobs and explore ways to redirect Brampton's production capacity. What began as a quiet corporate decision has now ignited one of the most significant industrial showdowns in modern Canadian history, one that could redefine how nations stand up to multinational corporations in defense of their workers and their sovereignty. The mission quickly grew beyond just saving one factory. It became about proving that Canada's industrial policy could act with real strength and purpose in a world where corporate loyalty is increasingly uncertain. But instead of spiraling into crisis, Canada did something few expected. It adapted. The Brampton shock didn't collapse the system. It triggered one of the fastest industrial pivots the country had seen in decades. What started as a painful loss soon evolved into an opportunity for renewal. Ottawa acted swiftly, ordering Stellantis to present a new plan for the Brampton facility by 2027, one that focuses on next-generation electric vehicle production. This wasn't simply a political demand, it was a strategic move to ensure Stellantis integrated Brampton into Canada's growing EV vision, rather than abandoning it altogether. Across Ontario, part suppliers began redirecting production towards the Windsor-St. Thomas corridor, the emerging backbone of Canada's domestic battery and EV manufacturing network. At the same time, the federal government expanded its employment support programs to help roughly 3,000 affected workers retrain or transition into related industries, preventing the widespread layoffs many had feared. On the policy front, Canada started rewriting its industrial playbook. Incentives would no longer be handed out based on corporate promises, but tied to measurable local results. How many jobs were created, how much production stayed within Canada, and how each project strengthened the national supply chain. Analysts now describe this as the birth of a more self-reliant system, a made-in-Canada EV framework designed to reduce foreign dependence and reinforce the country's long-term industrial autonomy. As the political storm began to settle, Stellantis found itself in an unfamiliar position, on the defensive. For years, the automaker had dictated the pace of negotiations. But this time, Ottawa controlled the narrative, backed by strong public support. Under pressure, Stellantis spokesperson Luann Gosselin said the company would continue discussions with the Canadian government, a small but meaningful concession. Trying to preserve goodwill, Stellantis pointed to its newly added third shift at the Windsor assembly plant as evidence of ongoing investment north of the border. Still, the optics were tough. Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown warned, "If Stellantis wins through intimidation, others will follow." His words reflected a growing sentiment across the country. This was no longer just about one company. It was about Canada's determination to defend its industrial sovereignty. In business circles, the standoff was seen as a turning point, a rare instance where a multinational corporation was forced to respond rather than dictate terms. Many investors now view the Brampton episode as a case study in how mid-sized economies can reclaim control in an era of global trade turbulence. By the time the dust settled, the Stellantis Canada showdown had become much more than a factory dispute. It was now a global example of economic sovereignty, a story proving that even a mid-sized nation can stand up to corporate overreach and make its rules matter. Observers in Europe and Asia are watching closely, viewing Ottawa's approach as a new model for tying public investment to corporate accountability, not protectionism, but fairness. One senior official summed it up clearly. Taxpayer funding will no longer serve as a bargaining chip for global corporations. The message echoed well beyond Canada's borders. While Stellantis tries to balance between Washington's pressure and global market demands, Canada has quietly positioned itself as a safe, stable partner, for transparent, rule-based industrial collaboration, especially in a time of trade wars and shifting alliances. Economists warn that if the US continues weaponizing tariffs, other allied nations may follow Canada's example, building their own safeguards against policy instability. The real question now isn't whether Canada won this round. It's whether this moment marks the start of a new industrial order. One where smaller nations prove that true power doesn't come from size, but from setting the rules. Please subscribe to the Timefold channel, and don't forget to like the video.